And hello there, and welcome once again to The Verdict for our 500th show. I never thought we'd make it this long.
Well, I didn't think we'd make 5, much less 500. It is kind of astounding.
One of the modern miracles of science and technology. Yeah. But thank you all for joining us. This is a show where we get together every week and meet interesting people and discuss topical issues. And today we're kind of go back and 500 shows and kind of figure out where we started with this show.
Yeah, the very first show we did was with John Coyle and State Representative John Nance on the question of should Terry Nichols be tried again. That was, of course, before it happened. It since has happened, and now we're going to kind of bring it up to current day, and we're going to have John Coyle back again as a guest, and we're going to have the trial judge who tried Terry Nichols join John with us on the set and talk about the trial and talk about the jury verdict and all, and what has been the impact since then. We think it'll be fascinating.
That's right. We'll go back 500 shows and revisit a topic that I think you'll find interesting today. It's coming up on The Verdict. Stay with us.
Natural gas is the gateway to a better world of energy. Instead of waiting, natural gas moves us forward now. Instead of finding ways to make dirty energy cleaner, natural gas simply is cleaner. We can use it to create our own energy, a wealth of new jobs, and keep more money here at home. Learn more at chk.com. Chesapeake, America's champion of natural gas.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
There's no waiting at the St. Anthony ER.
No waiting.
Announcing the end of ER waiting at St. Anthony Hospital. Go to saintsok.com and reserve your time online.
Why didn't we think of that? Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we're really thrilled to have two guests that are going to tell us a lot about the Terry Nichols trial and what impact it's had on the citizens of Oklahoma, along with a lot of other interesting things. To my left is the Chief Justice-elect of the Oklahoma Supreme Court, the Honorable Stephen Taylor. He did his undergraduate work at the Oklahoma State University. He did his law work at the University of Oklahoma. He's a retired major in the Marine Corps. Was in private practice in McAlester for a number of years. He was also mayor and a city councilman in McAlester. He served as a judge on the district court in Pittsburgh County for 20 years, and then and during that time presided over 500 jury trials, one of which was the Terry Nichols trial. He has been elected to the Oklahoma Hall of Fame and has received many other richly deserved honors from his peers and from the state of Oklahoma. Your Honor, thanks for joining us.
I'm honored to be here on number 500. That's great.
Well, we're pleased you are. On my right is John Coyle, who's making his 12th appearance on The Verdict. Some have suggested he's been on the other 499 shows, but that really isn't true. But he's been on a lot of them. He did his undergraduate work at Oklahoma City University and his law work there. He has been in the criminal defense practice in Oklahoma for 36 years. He has won the Clarence Darrow Award for being the outstanding criminal defense lawyer in Oklahoma as awarded by his peers. He's been a guest, as I say, a number of times on this show, and he was a guest on the very first Verdict show, and we're really pleased you'd come back and join us again.
Well, I'm honored to be back.
John, it's good to have you back.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Now, we
man.
taped that first show over 10 years ago. It aired April 1st of 2001 because it was our pilot, and it took us a while to actually get someone to sponsor the show and get us on the air. But nonetheless, here we are, some 500 episodes later, and because Kent and I don't have any new ideas, we just thought we'd start over with number one and start retracing our steps, figuring out, were we right at the time to push for that state trial of Terry Nichols, and how did it affect us today? And so what's your take looking back 10 years?
Well, whenever I look back on it, I still think that it was wrong to try Terry Nichols again, but it vindicated the rights of a lot of people, so there are competing interests in it. And I think a lot of the people that wanted it were not very pleased with the outcome of it after it happened. So, and of course, thanks to Judge Taylor, the defendant got a fair trial, and that makes all the difference in our system of justice. Both of the people who were on trial for the bombing got fair trials and really fair results under the circumstances.
Yeah, how can you ask for anything more than a fair trial and justice for the families and an outcome that most people think is fair?
Well, that's all you ask for in a trial, and what always the benchmark for me is whether or not the family of my client thought that their son or daughter got a fair trial. And I think that everyone involved in both the Terry Nichols trials and the trial that Judge Taylor tried and of course the trial that Judge Maitch tried in Denver for Tim McVeigh were both eminently fair trials. And so irrespective of the outcome, that's what the Constitution requires, is a fair trial.
Let's go back 10 years ago. Let's show a clip from that very first show. John Coyle, Mick Cornett, Kent Myers, and John Nance.
Why are we having the trial? Is it just to get the death penalty? Terry Nichols has been tried. He has been sentenced to spend the rest of his life in jail. Why are we trying him again?
We don't know what the appeal system in the federal system is going to be. There could be changes from Congress. We already are experiencing a moratorium on the death penalty, which could affect McVeigh's trial or his situation. And there's always a question of appeals. So there's a lot of things that could change the situation as we see it in the federal case for McVeigh and Terry Nichols. And I just don't think we ought to take that risk.
John, you want to respond briefly?
Yes, I think this business about it being a risk is hogwash. It's not a risk. There's no question that Terry Nichols will spend the rest of his life in prison.
Here we are back live, 10 years later.
Yes, Justice Taylor, tell us about how you felt when you found out that you drew the short straw and you were going to handle the trial of Terry Nichols down in McAllister.
Well, for obvious reasons, all the district judges in Oklahoma County recused themselves because of their having some relationship with victims, with survivors, and in fact to an extent they were victims themselves because the Oklahoma County Courthouse was shaken and damaged. So they all recused. The Supreme Court of Oklahoma had to find a trial judge to assign this case to, and the Supreme Court chose me, and I got a call from the Chief Justice.
What did he say exactly?
Well, he called me on a late afternoon, and
excuse me, who was it at the
Hardy
time?
Summers.
Hardy Summers from Muskogee.
Chief Justice Hardy Summers called me late afternoon and said he needed to talk with me about something important, and I was prepared to talk on the phone, and he said, "Can I come down to see you in the morning?" And so I had a restless night, wondering what it is that the Chief Justice wanted with me, that he needed to drive to McAllister. And he drove to McAllister, and we sat in my office in the Pittsburgh County Courthouse, and he sat down and said, we have to have a judge to do the Terry Nichols trial. He was very complimentary and, I guess getting me to where I couldn't say no. And he, wanted to know if I would take the assignment, and I'm a Marine, and when I'm called on to take a responsibility and duty, I say yes. And so I told him yes, and the work began.
At that time, did you understand or had the decision been made that the trial would in fact be held in Pittsburgh County?
No, I made that decision.
Tell us about that. What factors you considered?
Obviously, Oklahoma County, we could not expect, and we were going to have a hard enough time picking a jury anywhere in Oklahoma, much less Oklahoma County. That would have been an impossible. So everybody agreed, the prosecution and the defense agreed, that Oklahoma County and even the immediate Canadian county, immediate counties around Oklahoma, metropolitan Oklahoma City, would not be a good choice. So it left me with about 75 counties to choose from. And I must tell you that I was somewhat selfish in deciding that I've got to be at the top of my game in doing this and conducting this trial, and where I can be at the top of my game is in my home courtroom and going home to my house and my bed and my family at night. So I chose to try it in McAllister. Similarly, Judge Mach could have tried those cases when he moved them out of Oklahoma City. He could have tried them anywhere in the United States. He chose to try them in Denver, in his home court. And so there is a home court advantage that I was familiar with my courtroom, my staff, I knew the community. And the city of McAllister and Pittsburgh County Sheriff's Office, I really foisted a huge responsibility on those two local government entities, because the Pittsburgh County Sheriff's Office ended up with a major responsibility for security, and the city of McAllister.
Well, tell us a little bit about the security measures that were necessary.
Well, obviously protecting Terry Nichols was the number one security, the movement of him. I made arrangements with the Department of Corrections for him to be housed at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary, separate from the other inmates. But secure facility there. The Pittsburgh County Sheriff's Office transported him each day in a very secure manner. And then, of course, the courthouse security was a major concern, and we took measures to take care of that with Carl Albert Parkway, the main street through downtown McAllister. Half of it was closed to traffic. All the surrounding streets around the Pittsburgh County Courthouse were closed. The mayor was there. He came for a couple of days of the trial, and so he remembers how
I do remember, yeah.
And it was a very secure situation.
What year?
The trial began in March of 2004.
Yeah.
I had just taken office as mayor.
There were several months of pretrial matters that we did here in Oklahoma County in the basement of the Oklahoma County Courthouse in the courtroom. All the non-jury motions and pretrial stuff. But when we started getting ready for trial, I moved everything to McAllister.
More from Judge Taylor and John Coyle when we get back on the verdict.
From the first grade on, I knew I wanted to be an artist. That's all I ever thought about. I approach it much different than the normal weaver in that I look at my warp yarns, which are your base yarns, as a palette. That gives excitement to the cloth because you never know what you're going to get. I'm sure it's something I feel, not something I talk about a lot, the spiritual aspect of it, but it is there, it's below the surface, and it's guiding me. I feel very blessed to be a Chickasaw. I feel like I have just been given this heritage. It gives me a whole reason for doing the beadwork patterns in my weave structures. Seeing the Chickasaw tribe fostering art, using art, and how valuable it is to the tribe is inspirational. And the creative thought, you know, it's in business, it's in economics. It's what gives us meaning, it's what gives us depth. It's what makes us see the beautiful of the world.
The oil and natural gas industry help provide a revenue that feeds our schools, providing a better education for not only my kids, but for children all over the state.
It will allow the schools to buy better equipment. We'll be able to hire qualified teachers, all around to have a better educational experience.
The future has never been brighter for our students here.
We should be very proud of the oil and gas industry in Oklahoma.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers and our guests, Justice Taylor and John Coyle. We are revisiting a topic that we introduced 500 shows ago. Our very first show, we talked about Terry Nichols and whether or not he should receive a state trial. And Judge Taylor, you were going back to the days when you were trying that case. It ultimately took place in the spring of 2004, and you had to help select a jury. How did that go about?
Well, normally I'd tried many first-degree murder trials, and I would normally bring 150 jurors to the courthouse to select a jury. In this case, I summoned 1,000 jurors in Pittsburgh County instead of 150. Obviously, we couldn't put 1,000 people in the Pittsburgh County Courthouse on the first day of jury orientation, so I used the high school auditorium, McAllister High School auditorium that seats 1,100. And the first day it was kind of a surreal experience. I was up on the stage. I was behind the podium of the same podium that when I was student body president of McAllister High School in 1967, I was standing behind the same podium presiding over the beginning of this major murder trial. I had Terry Nichols and his lawyers up on the stage on one side at a table and the prosecutors on the other side, and 1,000 jurors out in the auditorium. Began the jury orientation. We went through a lot of the preliminary things, and I broke them down into groups of 100 and then brought them back to the courthouse on irregular, on a staggered schedule.
What were you looking for?
Well, it's just real simple, and John knows this, that what you're looking for is just, whether it's a burglary case or a first-degree murder case, you're looking for a fair and impartial juror, and the basic, simple description of that is a juror who can set aside everything they know or heard or read or feel about a case and promise under their oath that they can be fair and impartial and decide the case only on the evidence and the law they hear in the courtroom.
So you were trying not to treat this any differently than any other case that would be before
I had to
you.
treat it the same because an appellate court might be reviewing what I did, and I had to follow the rules. And my whole goal in this, and I told Mr. Nichols this on the district court arraignment the very first day I met him in the basement of the county courthouse in that courtroom, I told him, promised him, that there would be a fair trial or no trial at all. And that was my goal through the whole process, is that we were either going to have a fair trial or I was going to dismiss the case and say, John Coyle and others were right. We can't have a fair trial. I was determined that I was going to be convinced that there was going to be a fair trial. I was certain there would be a fair trial, or I was prepared to dismiss it, say we can't do a fair trial, we can't have a fair trial, we're going to the house. And that was the plan.
How long did the jury selection take?
About 3 weeks.
And did the questioning of the lawyers of the potential jurors change, or was it different than what you get in a normal case?
Well, it was so tedious in going over each juror's, this was a case, normally you're looking for 12 jurors who've never heard of the case. Well, in this case, everybody had heard all about the case. So there was tedious questioning, and I took control over a lot of it. I did a lot of the jury questioning, much to the chagrin of the lawyers, but I'd handled a lot of the jury examination because I wanted to control it and keep it tight and keep it focused and do it correctly. And we did it individually in the jury room, brought in one juror at a time, and it was discouraging at the beginning because it was taking so long to find, I think the first 2 or 3 days we came up with 2 jurors in 3 days. And I got somewhat discouraged thinking, are we ever going to get, can we really do this? Can we get it? Well, we just kept going, and we ended up with a jury panel that I think they proved themselves to be fair and impartial.
You got 12, and you had some alternates?
We had 6 alternates.
6 alternates.
Can you sum up the prosecution's case? What were they working on?
The prosecution we had excellent lawyers, both sides of this case, and the prosecution made a classic case of circumstantial evidence. There was a lot of direct evidence, but a huge amount of this case was based on circumstantial evidence, one of the most monumental investigations ever undertaken in the history of this country. And they had, in fact, I wrote this down because Kent asked me to look back. I went back over my notes yesterday. The state called 152 witnesses in their case in chief, and then the defendant called 97 witnesses, and then the state's rebuttal, 12 witnesses. Total, with the sentencing and all, 349 witnesses were called.
What was the defense's case? They had already lost at the federal level.
Their main job, the defense lawyer's main job, and again, John knows this quite well, is to hold the state to the burden of proving its case beyond a reasonable doubt. A lot of it was circumstantial evidence. Mr. Nichols was not in Oklahoma City on the day the bomb went off. He was in Harrington, Kansas, and they were working on trying to mitigate, extenuate the circumstances, trying to raise a reasonable doubt. They did an excellent job. They had a tough case to defend because this was a very tough case.
John, let me ask you, did you go down and see any, or did you follow it as it was going along?
No, but I followed it throughout, and I was interested, and I had followed a lot of Tim McVeigh's trial because I was there for ABC News a lot, and it was an extraordinarily well-prepared case by the prosecution.
The lead prosecutor was Wes Lane?
Yes.
And the lead defense lawyer was?
Well, let me just say, the lead prosecutors were Sandra Elliott and Suzanne Lister.
Oh, okay.
They were assistant district attorneys working for Wes Lane.
Okay, thank you.
And Sandra and Suzanne were the lead counsel, and then Brian Hermanson was lead on the defense.
Yes, and it was very interesting to watch the lawyers work at the federal level, and then also to see the case, as I did, presented again on the state level. And it was extraordinary because, like Steve Taylor was talking about, it was such a different trial. It was so monumental in the terms of the circumstantial evidence. And they had investigated, they had overturned every rock they could everywhere. So they had a lot of good evidence to present. And it made it a tough case to defend, and the lawyers did a great job at both levels.
Let me ask you both a question and comment to the extent that you think is necessary. The decision was made that two people should share the blame for this crime. Should it have been more than two? Should it have just been one? In other words, should Terry Nichols have been tried at all, or should it have been 3 or 4 or 5 people?
I can speak to that. Based on my knowledge of the evidence, I have no doubt that Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols carefully planned this crime and carefully carried it out, executed it, both of them equally involved. Nichols is the one who was involved in a lot of the planning and execution. McVeigh is the one who actually lit the fuse, literally lit the fuse in the back of the Ryder truck. But both of them were clearly involved in the planning and execution. The Fortiers, Michael and Lori Fortier, knew about this. Part of this was planned on their kitchen table in Kingman, Arizona, moving soup cans around on the kitchen table about how to place the barrels in the back of the truck to have maximum explosive effect. I gave the defense every opportunity to present evidence of any other people involved in this crime. We had hearings, motion hearings at night during the trial, and I gave them every opportunity to bring witnesses to demonstrate that other people were involved, and there was no admissible evidence of others involved. Absolutely no.
Fortier got 12 years, his wife got none.
Right.
And Terry Nichols' brother was never really charged, although there was some circumstantial evidence that maybe he was an instigator.
They had blown up some stumps on the farm at the Nichols farm in Michigan, and practicing building things to blow up things on the farm. So James Nichols, knew something was going on. It's not an everyday activity that you're, cooking up bombs and blowing up stumps for fun. But he was not. There was no evidence that he was involved.
We are out of time, way more quickly than I wish we were. But thank you all both for coming back on our 500th show and revisiting this important topic.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thanks for coming.
John Coyle, Chief Justice Taylor. Justice Taylor. We'll be right back for the final word after this.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Over time, owning your home has proved to be a good decision. And while lately the economy has presented challenges, it's also helped us focus on what matters most: family, friendship, community, and finding a home that's right for you. No one has more experience and expertise to help you than an agent who is a realtor. We're prepared to show you options, answer your questions, and guide you home. Every market's different. Call a realtor today.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable insight.
Wrapping up a show, our 500th show on the trial of Terry Nichols and Justice Taylor. Wrap it up. Where are we now, 7 years later?
Well, I think it's important that we tried this case. There were 161 counts of murder. We got them tried. We had a fair trial, and the system in Oklahoma was proven to the nation to be a good one. And I told Mr. Nichols when I sentenced him, you know, it's ironic that the government that you hated so much is the government that was big enough and strong enough to give you a fair trial.
All his rights kicked in. John Coyle.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Both of the defendants in the bombing got fair trials, and everything turned out fair in the end, but it shows the people of Oklahoma that stepped up and have done so much. It's brought our community together, and our community has grown enormously.
And we will see you next week on another edition of The Verdict.
Thanks, folks.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.